Okay, you know what? I'm going to try this again. Hello there, by the way. I want to talk about Shang-Chi. Finally saw it. And thank you to OCA, Greater Cleveland. Wayne and Lisa, thank you. I appreciate you. And I, this is like my third attempt at this. The first one was having technical difficulties because for some reason video thing doesn't want to work right all the time. I always have to restart things in order for it to happen. The other time I got it to work, but quite frankly, I talked about the entire plot of the movie, and interspersed with that was sort of a general review and things I liked and some things that I was a little struggling with. And it was probably an hour, a little bit more. I don't know, that just felt excessive. So I'm going to try this again and try and make it a little bit more coherent, perhaps. As my cat gets into things she shouldn't be getting into. Alright. So, that being said, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Honestly, kind of should be Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Rotating Exposition. It might seem like I didn't like it. I did. I liked it. I enjoyed it. And there's a lot of different reasons for it. I don't think that in terms of it just as a straight up movie, kind of cutting away like kind of everything else, just straight up movie in and of itself, it's a Marvel movie. You know, it's not really going to light up the world in terms of in a lot of different ways. There are some things in it that will and can do and probably are in some ways. In terms of a movie as a whole, though, it's a Marvel movie. It's a good one, and I enjoyed watching it. I will watch it again, maybe on its own. Well, probably on its own, just in general anyway, and it will not be something that if I go through the entire MCU canon again that I'll skip. You know, I'm definitely going to hit it. I'm definitely going to watch it again. I enjoyed it. I liked it. There was some stuff in that ticked some cool boxes for me. I think the main comparison to Black Panther happens in mainly due to the representation. It's a lot of Chinese individuals, pretty much all Asian, and it normalizes different parts of cultures. I'm not going to just lump everything into one culture because that's insane. But it normalizes things from the cultures that it's pulling from, without having to go, okay, white kid, we're going to explain this part to you when we have a funeral thing and we go to the cemetery. No, it just sort of some of the conversations, like the conversation they had with Aquafina's character Katie, her grandmother, and was talking about, you know, basically leaving offerings at her deceased husband's grave. The way they talked about it, and last year, and what you do, and this, that, and the other thing, it was like a normal conversation, and it wasn't trying to clue anyone else in the movie. Like, yeah, they didn't have some white friend who was in there and was like, what do you mean? Why are you doing that at a cemetery? Well, let me tell you, blah, blah, blah. It didn't do any of that. It was like, this is just normal culture. This is what it is. And went with it, which was cool. And I like that, you know, especially in this day and age, we got the internet. If you want to know something about that thing, you can look stuff up. Or if you have the option and people to do so, ask people. You can ask questions respectfully without being a dickhead about it. So that was cool. There was also a comparison with Black Panther because there is a substance, shall we say, that is practically vibranium in this movie, and that's dragon scales. Because when they get to what's called Dalo, which is this sort of other dimension, it seems like it's actually kind of a higher plane because you can kind of do like some of the magic-y kung fu movie stuff. You can apparently do there, especially if you're from there or are connected to it. and there's a dragon in it. Yeah, the more sort of Asian type that's sort of like a swimming snake-like kind of dragon. So if you're familiar with, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Spirited Away, any number of other things like that, it's like that in there, which is a really amazing surprise because not only was that super cool to see and to be part of sort of the mythology and everything else like that, but when the main bad guy kind of cleared down this gate and allowed these sort of like Lovecraftian sort of demon monsters come through that steal souls for this really big um, sort of monster, sort of like flying, scaly, lizardy, dragonish sort of thing. A little bit sort of like a King Ghidorah with one head sort of look, but the head was different and had like tentacle things. There was a kaiju fight. Spoiler alert, there's a freaking kaiju fight. Basically, it's this big swimming sort of more Asian Chinese style dragon and this Lovecraft lizard dragon sort of thing. There's a big monster fight sort of thing. Not really saying dragons are monsters, and especially within context culturally, they're not really. But ostensibly, what you're seeing on screen is this big, cool, like kaiju fight, which I was completely not expecting, but was absolutely loving. Especially since the really cool, swimming, culturally appropriate sort of Asian dragon was super cool. And I really like that. So those are kind of the main. I'm just going to get that out of the way. Those are sort of the main parallels that people are going to talk about as comparing it to Black Panther. The stories are very different, however. Black Panther, well, maybe the other difference is you can draw some sympathy with the villains. Um, but the villains are very different. Killmonger, they did the thing, this sort of character assassination, where quite frankly, they kind of got a point in a lot of ways, but they have to show them being kind of a psycho murderer in order. So, like, hey, we just realized we're getting way too much empathy and sympathy for the villain. We got to do something to remind people that they're the bad guy and they shouldn't be rooting for them. Kind of didn't do that this much with this. I mean, with this, and I think part of it helps that Tony Leung Chiu, because there's a couple of them if you watch enough sort of Chinese cinema. There's a couple of famous ones, but this one, he's the one who's in Hero, Hard Boiled, which I highly recommend. I mean, if you get to watch Hero with Jet Li and Donnie Yen's in it for a hot minute, Zhang Zi, Maggie Chung, excellent movie, beautiful movie, really defines the idea of a moving picture. Try to get a version that's not the one with Quentin Tarantino's name on it, because the way they do some of the translation and the subtitles, there's this big. I'm not going to get into it now, but there's a big moment at the end that kind of makes things work a certain way. They kind of explain it a little the same, but the version I have is actually a Chinese copy that came out before Quentin Tarantino slapped his name on it. And I like Quentin Tarantino, but it came out before that, and the way they describe it's a little bit different. So that's my recommendation for that. But you've seen like Chungking Express, Lust Caution, which was Ang Lee's movie. It came out like 10, 12 years ago. Had a lot of controversy around it, mostly due to the apparently, well, not apparently, I've seen it, but they're fairly graphic sex scenes and stuff. But this guy is, Tony Leung is an absolutely fan freaking tastic actor. I would have liked the movie anyway. I liked it so much more simply because of him. You could have him pretty much do whatever, and it would be really interesting to watch in whatever context cinematically. He's got a lot of the times he's in his movies, he can be very quiet. He's kind of got like a lot of times there's a smile that comes up, but it can be anything between amused to utterly depressed and heartbroken to insane almost sort of thing. So he's such an amazing actor, and he really made that movie. And his thing being 1,000 years old with these rings, weapons that he found that has kept him alive and stuff like that. You get the feeling, yeah, you can imagine this guy is definitely lived more than just one or two lifetimes. Like he had that quiet, power that you never really get in most movies or TV shows where there's someone who's supposed to be hundreds of years old. Very rarely do you ever get that. So you almost have to justify their behavior as they get stuck in the moment that they're made into that immortal being, whatever that might be. So whatever sort of crap they didn't get through or deal with, then that's what they're stuck with. Now, apparently, Tony Leung made a backstory for his character, who's 1,000 years old at this, and brought in like this whole thing of like being abused as a kid and having no self-esteem. So when he found like these rings, these weapons, basically, then that gave him power. And but he wasn't able to really deal with having kids, right, and also stuff because he didn't know. And even though he's 1,000 years old and did all this stuff and created and ran yet another sort of behind the scenes ninja organization that's running everything, like there isn't enough of those. I keep almost wanting to say Spectre, but I know that's James Bond. But like the Hand or Hydra or anything else like that. There's another one. Um, he still, is dealing with all this other stuff. He's used to having power and everything. He's used to kind of overpowering things. So when he meets this woman, when he's looking for this mystical land to try and get more power, and she defeats him with awesome Taiji Bagua Gong Fu, Neja Gong Fu, winning. Is that still a thing people say? And he's like, oh, and then she gives up her power, he gives up his power and stuff, but past comes back in. There's a scene, of course the mom's going to die because, well, I mean, MCU's in Disney now, so of course the mom's going to die. Unless the couple is married at the beginning of the movie, mom's probably dead. Where Shang-Chi as a kid has to see this, and it's stuff from dad's past that comes back. And the heartbreaking scene when you see Tony Leung's character's Zhu and Wu, and which apparently has meaning too. It's like intellectual administration and martial administration sort of thing. But you see him, and it's heartbreaking that he's this woman who, after 1,000 years of life, found someone that quote was a reason to grow old, because it was the rings were keeping him like immortal, and this was like he put them away to grow old with somebody, and this was worth that to him. And she was dead, and she was dead because of people from his past coming to kind of resettle the score and everything. But what they didn't sort of showcase, well, they showcased it and they showed it, but this woman who was away from her home, her magic land of magic and awesome creatures, still looked like she killed like 25 of them before finally succumbing and dying herself. It looks like she killed like everyone who came for them and then ended up dying. And there was probably 25, 30 dudes. It's like, damn. Mama's got, was it hands? Mama's got hands. But anyway, he he sort of takes that. If you've ever seen North by Northwest, a Hitchcock movie with Cary Grant, his life's kind of turning to crap, but he still has like this really smooth sort of thing going on. He's the smile. He sort of takes that and runs with it. I mean, he's basically talking about taking this entire army he's been in the head of for 1,000 years, raiding this other dimension because he thinks his dead wife is speaking to him, and he thinks that this other dimension has held her in punishment for marrying him and having kids. Well, no, she's dead, and it's that Lovecraft monster, this dweller in darkness, that's screwing with him telepathically. But he's convinced it's her. He's convinced of the rightness of raiding this whole other place and breaking her out. And he's basically like, we're going to go to war. We're going to destroy it. He looks at his son. He's just got this smile, and it's like peaceful and earnest, but it's like this dude's going to like murder someone sort of look too. Anyway, Tony Leung, absolute king, Every time I've seen him, he's been amazing. Subtle, understated, but still very powerful. Excellent choice. Excellent job. Apparently, everyone on set was just like in awe of the dude the entire time. And man, I mean, even if I have absolutely no doubt of that whatsoever. You know, just in general, and then this performance on top of that too. Absolute, total, amazing job. Michelle Yeoh's in it, who's of course fabulous and gorgeous and perfect and wonderful and everything. She's not really even in that much, and is more sort of like a latter teacher sort of thing. So it's a little bit different sort of thing, but she was amazing in it too. I'm not as familiar with Aquafina. She was pretty funny. There was some stuff with her that felt really forced. I don't know if it was ad-libbed. I don't know if it was just the writing. I don't know if it was like, well, we've got to try and shoehorn some humor into this somehow. Some of it worked and was really funny. Some of it was really like, did we need that? Yeah. So I don't know exactly how they did it, but she was good. And what was another thing that was cool is that, at the final fight thing, she had a thing that helped reset the stage so that, the heroes could do their thing. But also, as a woman and someone of Asian descent, she was a badass driver. Because I'm sure everyone's sort of familiar with the stereotypes that women can't drive and Asians can't drive. So now we have an Asian woman who's a badass driver. Didn't matter if it was this cool sports car zooming through the street. Didn't matter if it was like this huge double ended bus sort of thing, and then half of it got destroyed or dropped off. It didn't matter if it was some like SUV, RV, not an RV, but like SUV-ish kind of thing through a shifting forest and everything else like that, through a magic forest. Didn't matter. She did a great job with that, and that was kind of like one of her, really contributive things with that, was being able to do that, and she did it well. It wasn't just like a joke, like she was talking about how awesome she is as a driver, and it was a joke. No, she was dead serious. She was a badass driver, and I thought that was a really cool kind of to the people who really got all their stereotype hackles in a bunch, especially with stuff like this, because those people are out there, the schmucks that they are. So with the fighting. Now, of course, it's going to be it's a Marvel movie, so there's action, and there's it's Shang-Chi is a whole like master of kung fu. So of course there's going to be martial arts stuff in there. Now, Marvel movies, take note. Other American and Western action and martial arts fighting and movies with fighting in it, take note. The shaky cam stuff, where it's all this, and cut, and cut, and cut, and someone throws a punch, but you cut to the other person, you throw a punch, cut to the other person, and shaky and cut is garbage, it's crap. Grow the hell up and learn how to make a fight scene halfway decent, because that stuff is garbage. This movie did not do that. This movie did good fight scenes where you can actually see the actors fighting. These other ones, oh, we trained for 6 months. Well, you never know it, because clearly 90% of the fight scene is the stunt double, the other person. It's not the actual person. And even if it is, the camera's so shaky and the cuts are so fast and so many, you can't get a read on what's going on anyway. I don't know if people think that actually gives people the sense of excitement, like they're involved with it. But to me, it's stupid. It's headachy. You can't see the things clearly. I want to see the actual fight. And even sometimes, in the other times I've done this, I actually took my computer and did this to kind of do the thing. You even have some of these movies that are supposed to be arty and they're supposed to be gritty and realistic, but the camera is basically doing this, so it looks like your eyes are kind of rolling around and constantly moving. I don't know how it is for most of you, but even with like migraines and allergies and being nearsighted and colorblind and all this other stuff, I get floaters and all these other things. I don't look at things like this. And if I am moving my head, if I'm looking at something, everything still looks fairly steady. So all you film students and you really connoisseurs of film who think that that weird sort of bobbing cam thing is interesting or smart or good or gritty or realistic or pulls you into the thing, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And for those of you who think, if you're really involved with these fight scenes and these action sequences that basically look like someone's doing this on the camera the whole time for everything that happens ever, and there's 20 million in this 10 seconds that I've been doing this, and there's 15 jump cuts, I got news for you. That's not. I don't understand how you're fooled by that being interesting. Now, it's one thing if they're in a vehicle or, on like a spaceship or something and they're getting rocked by, fire from another thing, or the vehicle is actually crashing over and you've got a little bit, or your camera's supposed to be POV and someone actually takes a hit and kind of moves over. There are places and times and everything for it. The problem is it's used so ubiquitously all the time that it's garbage. There's no point to it. Fortunately, this movie, you can see the fight scenes clearly. The people who are fighting are pretty much the people who are fighting. The actual actors are doing stuff. Yeah, there's special effects things, especially when they go to Dalo, which is that other dimension sort of village, protecting the world from, that dweller coming out and eating all our souls. Thank you. They have some of the actual sort of like kung fu magic stuff, so you can manipulate wind and stuff with all like the routines that you play and everything else like that, which actually had like a really funny moment too. People were like, "Oh, I heard you laugh a couple of times." I was like, "Yeah, when Shang-Chi initially sort of is taught by his aunt, Michelle Yeoh's aunt, basically, they teaches helps him sort of open up his ability to work the internals, which is like his mom's style." And he was like, "Oh, okay, I got it. I'm a badass now. Watch, I'm going to come at you again, Auntie." And she just sort of like uses this wind thing and flips him up, and he just lands. It was really funny. Um, but you could still see them doing the moves, and the style choices and everything. There were clear style delineations between people, and some of the style changes for the main characters through the movie as well as it goes on, because there's Shang-Chi and there's Xiaoling, which is his sister. And she's got some cool moments and is pretty badass, and realistically sort of like, dude, you left. And I don't know if she can necessarily blame him so much, especially given one of the many. And there's one thing if you have like a couple of flashbacks, but when every other thing kind of seems like a flashback with stuff. Again, it's Shang-Chi and the legend of the constant exposition. It just pulled me out. There was so much of it, and it was so interspersed throughout, as opposed to kind of you get this out of the way here, that it was kind of like, oh, okay, we're doing another flashback. All right. I don't know if it's an editing choice or a stylistic choice, or they were going for something, an homage to something. They were ripping something off. I don't know if it was a device or just an editing choice that didn't work out so well. But it got kind of like annoying and kind of jarring. Like, I just want to go on, please. But yeah, so even the fighting styles kind of told a story, and people had a purpose and a function. There was the fight between Abomination from the Ed Norton Hulk movie and Wong, from it's Doctor Strange and everything, and that was kind of neat. But the real reason kind of for that was so they would know. So later on at the end of the movie, like the mid-credit scene, was basically Wong coming for them while they're having dinner with a couple friends that they saw earlier. They were kind of like chiding them for being a little immature, and then they're like, "Well, I'm supposed to believe this." Then Wong comes in and be like, "Yeah, dude, look." So, but you find out in the sort of mid-credit scene that they're trying to analyze the rings, and you have the holograms of Captain Marvel and Banner. Not Hulk, Professor Hulk, but Bruce Banner. His arm is in a sling, though. So you get the sense maybe it's kind of close to after. We don't know how close to after Endgame it is, because Captain Marvel has longer hair again instead of the shorter one. So who knows? Anyway, they're like, well, these things aren't really. They're not vibranium. We don't know if they're alien. I just know when you use them, it set off. People felt it. Things felt it. So, Wong was basically telling us like, you both, even Katie, even though she was doing like archery stuff and helping him, not really a fighter, but was like the driver and helping with some archery stuff. It was like both of you are pretty much in the life now. Your life has now changed and it's never going to ever be any different. So kind of be prepared for that. Not necessarily saying, hey, by the way, welcome to the Avengers or anything, but basically saying you're in this bigger world now and you're not going to escape it. And I think that was kind of, since it's sort of an obvious choice to be able to do that, given again the cultural impact of the choices made in the movie, and since again we're also talking about other dimensions and like kind of crazy artifacts and stuff, it makes sense thematically with that too. So, also good choice with sort of rebranding the Mandarin as not being the Mandarin. They even make it, because technically speaking, Shang-Chi's father in the comics, I haven't really read that many of the comics, really wasn't one of my big things back in the day. But Fu Manchu is supposed to be Shang-Chi's father. Created at a time when you could get away with things like that, and then sort of perpetuated for a while, including things like Christopher Lee playing him. Wow. And don't get at me with any sort of, well, the times are different. You have to. I don't care. I don't care. It shouldn't have been that way to begin with. And shoulda, woulda, coulda, and all this other stuff. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. It's really inappropriate. And is indicative of the sort of colonial and imperialist conditioning that we're trying to break, we're trying to get out of, and movies like this are trying to be like, look, this needs to, other things in the world exist, and let's celebrate that too for once, please. Can we? Thank you. So in the comics they changed it, and then they changed it in the movie as well, where Zhu Wenwu really is the Mandarin. It was the person that Killian based Slattery on. It's Trevor Slattery, who shows up later. He does show up in this, kind of like passing the Mandarin torch almost sort of thing, and even saying, oh, look, it was fake, and I wasn't supposed to be that. And it's part of passing a torch and part of trying to kind of retcon, explain part of Iron Man 3, where it's like, hey, look, no, they just kind of made me do this for this thing, and this whole thing with the 10 rings and the Mandarin. And Zhu Wenwu was like, yeah, my legend has been so much that even these dipshits were put some actor to try and pretend to be me as a terrorist, because that was that mythology was already sort of built in. And then he talks about, it was like they made me after a dish, the Mandarin. That's chicken. They named me after chicken. They named me after an orange. It's insulting. So, we're going to do this right, sort of thing. But, having Ben Kingsley be kind of goofy in the movie was nice, but some of it also seemed kind of forced and kind of in it a little too much. Like, oh, well, we got him in to kind of retcon things, but we kind of feel bad having him do only to retcon this, so screw it, let's just bring him in the rest of the movie. Now, he did kind of fill in a certain trope I've seen in other like Chinese movies and Asian movies and stuff, where he's kind of sort of like the silly, goofy older guy who sometimes, has little bits of wisdom or helpful, but is, doing things like faking he's dead in order so people don't actually try and kill him. That. So I've seen that in other things before, so it's almost like trying to bring that into um, into this maybe more kind of like Western movie a little bit. So there, if you're familiar with like especially like kung fu movies, then there's going to be stuff in this you're going to be familiar with as well. Not as a bad thing; it's a good thing. And I don't think it's going to be the infection, the sort of trope infection that came in after the first Matrix movie, where everything kind of was like, because we do this as a reactionary culture. One little thing hits one way or the other. So instead of going, oh, okay, that's cool, maybe I adapt that or something, we just shove it in the face of everything. Like when Chipotle really started getting big, everyone and their damn brothers started loading stuff up with cilantro to the point where even those of us who like cilantro can barely eat half this stuff because there's so much damn cilantro in it. I do not have the thing where cilantro tastes like soap, but I've been to like even Panera, which is like the whitest thing I do. Admittedly, I do like Panera. Um, and I remember I've got soup there a couple times, and I'm like, oh, I would like some soup with my bowl of cilantro, please. It's totally ruined. You can't eat anything. And that's what we tend to do, whether it's movies, whether it's food, whether it's music, whether it's politics or anything. We react in one way and everything either jumps on that bandwagon and completely burns it out or completely is a reactionary to the other side, and then nothing is helpful with that either. I don't think this movie is going to have anything in terms of that, unless hopefully it's actually having accessible fight scenes that aren't super shaky and jump cutty, and you can actually see the people you're supposed to see involved in the actual fighting, as opposed to just sort of like B movies doing that or something, like mainstream movies actually making fight scenes, holding sort of directors and companies responsible for making fight scenes that we can see instead of sort of shaky migraine cams all the time. That'd be nice. And maybe, hopefully, certain, again, the representation, which I've heard accounts of people of Asian descent being like, wow, it's a big deal, and we're in 2021, and, honestly, like movies like Black Panther and Shang-Chi are a big deal for representation, and that's sort of scary. It's kind of scary and sad that it's got to be this long, and that's still a thing. It's a sadness. Um, Trying to make sure I hit all the beats without again going for like an hour or more. Yeah, again, I enjoyed it. I liked having fantasy creatures and a sort of other dimension world. I like that. I like forests that move and change and stuff. Like I like all that sort of stuff. So like having a bit of magic to it was nice, as opposed to just having, oh well, the Arthur C. Clarke, any technology that's significantly advanced would be undistinguishable from magic. Like Wakanda has that. It looks magical because the technology is so advanced. This was actually freaking magic and dragon scales and fairy realm kung fu and stuff like that. It was cool. There was one bit where they're going through into Dalo, and there's like a portal, and you know how like the way the spiraling and the sort of sparkle or fire outline that Doctor Strange and Wong's portals and stuff have as they go through. This had that same movement and that same growth and that same feel, but it was out of water. So it's like we're building in now that not all magic has to be this one way. Not all things have to be, it's not, the world building isn't just set where, okay, everything is kind of along these lines, and even if it's magic, we have these parameters. It seemed to kind of like, no, there's this too. So it kind of, maybe I'm reading into it too much. It's just like a portal they showed quickly. But I mean, it does kind of allow for now people to kind of take it in different directions other than just, well, we have to follow these one specific rules, Doctor Strange rules. You don't have to do that now. And having other you know mystical realm with like dragons and like foo dogs and big lion things and all this other stuff. And the little guy that Trevor Slattery had that sort of looked like a fuzzy ottoman with 6 legs and sort of peacocky, phoenixy kind of wings. I don't know what that was supposed to be. There were several of the animals there that I'm just sort of inferring are actual mythological creatures from at least China, if not other countries. Some of them I recognized either from illustrations or a couple stories. I can't remember all the names or anything, but I'm like, oh, that, yes, yeah, 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 that. I know of that. I can't think of the name. So, that was cool. I enjoyed that. And Simu Liu, great job. Again, everyone in it was good. Some of the writing stuff, some of the lines, some of the dialogue, some of the sort of forced humor was sort of like, ew, it kind of made me do this a little bit. And then again, the way they did the exposition and the looping kind of um, flashbacks, ooh, pulled me out of it too. It's almost like you expect it in like a syndicated TV show that, oh, we have to have at least 1 or 2 flashbacks every episode. Kung Fu Legend Continues or Highlander or something. That's just part of the mythos of the show. You expect that every episode. I mean, they probably had, and it's not like, oh, well, I remember some of the flashbacks were, oh, I remember this thing, and it was a montage of a couple things, but some of them are like, oh, now I'm going to remember this whole huge scene. Oh, now I'm going to give this exposition. Now I'm going to give this exposition. And there's exposition in the beginning, a prologue sort of thing in the beginning. So there was a lot of I don't know, maybe there could have been more show me instead of tell me, or maybe work the flashbacks in maybe more chunks, so that way I just remember there was a couple of, like, even halfway through I'm like, oh, okay, more exposition flashback. It pulled me out of the immersion because there's another one. And again, they were well acted. There's important story things. I don't know, maybe if you just tell the whole movie in chronological order instead of kind of bouncing back and forth or something. I don't know, but it jarred me and kind of pulled me out a little bit. But yes, the overall good movie. I enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing it again. The representation was awesome. The acting was really good. Again, Tony Leung was bespoke. Good job on the action. Good job on the fight scenes. Cool on all the um, mystical and fantasy sort of aspects to it, and especially in terms of the other world and these other creatures and cool magic god kung fu. But also really cool, again, to reiterate, the normalizing of the culture, especially that scene with the grandmother and talking about, sort of what they would do as offerings in cemeteries and things like that. It was normalized, but it was stuff that, I mean, cemetery offerings and things like that is something I'm going to be interested in anyway, and how cultures deal with the dead and the ancestors and the spirits and everything like that. All that stuff I'm cool with. So that's ticking personal boxes for me. I mean, look, Black Panther and Coco, same thing. It was, we didn't have to sit here and spoon feed audiences about what the culture is, and it dealt with like spirits and the dead. All stuff, again, for me, personal things ticking boxes. So yeah, it was good. It was enjoyable. There's a lot I liked about it. I thought there was a lot that was important culturally as well as cinematically. And yeah, I think that while there are those couple little things that I talked about in terms of parallels with Black Panther, beware of just saying, well, it's Asian Black Panther, because it's really not. the circumstances are very different, the characters are very different, and they should be, because what just in terms of just people at all, two people in two different situations aren't going to be the same thing, and nor should they be. And two cultures shouldn't be doing things exactly the same way either. But then there are going to be a lot of parallels anyway, because even though two cultures separated out fairly significantly aren't going to do the same things and everything, there are going to be things where there is crossover, because after all, we're all human beings, and there is kind of a human nature that shows up, and a through line thread through history and culture and stuff anyway. So yes, so having a couple little similarities with things there is good. Having it be culturally different and everything, also really good. It's just more reasonable, and it's more authentic that way, because yes, that's what people are going to have and what people are going to do. But overall, it is still a Marvel movie. It hits, certain points. But, and I think I forgot about this. I'm losing track of which video I made. But a good thing, Shang-Chi and Katie, just friends. Just friends. They state they're just friends. They're able to show some affection and all this other stuff without it having to be like, oh, well, now they're going to bang. Which is, I personally, I have a problem with if people show affection and automatically they have to bang. Just watch Sherlock. Sherlock and Watson, oh, they're banging. Well, why can't they just be super close and affectionate towards each other, and not be romantic? Like what? How? Think of all the fanfics that people put online. How many of them are people who, if they show a little bit of affection toward each other or a lot of animosity, we just want them to bang. We just want them to bone. That's it. Like, there's a whole spectrum of human behavior and development and relationships and even love that has nothing to do with romance or sex. Let's normalize that a little bit. Yes, there are occasions where people will be in these situations, and yeah, they're going to go at it. They might not find lifelong romance, or they might. There's a whole bunch of stuff that could be going. It doesn't have to be one thing. So having a character, an attractive male character, attractive female character, both capable, intelligent, funny, interesting characters, show affection towards each other, doesn't mean it always has to be sexual. I like that. I kind of hope that continues. If they keep going and have them in other movies, have them being in other relationships or something great, healthy relationships where the friends are cool with the other people as long as the other people are cool with them, and having healthy relationships, great. Doesn't mean that they have to always hook up and get together either. So I like that as well. And I think that's about it. I think I hit everything, and in much less time than the previous one. So, yay. So, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, all the cool YouTubey stuff. And if you get a chance, watch Shang-Chi. If you get a chance in the theater, cool. Kind of help maybe support some of that Scarlett Johansson Black Widow idea that, hey, look, you were supposed to do stuff in the theater, not this, and this went to the theater, and look how good this did, and all that sort of stuff too. So, and again, thank you to OCA Greater Cleveland, Wayne and Lisa. Appreciate you guys, and ciao.